that's crazy.
I've come to know Pete over the years. You know, we've investigated some things together in Australia and the US, and we've become good friends. You know, because he has a long track record of high-level psychic functioning as well as very unique and ongoing experiences, things typically happen, get weird, get interesting when he and I are in the field investigating together.
I've known Peter for quite some time, and I think his heart's unquestionable. His integrity levels are unquestionable. He is getting questioned a lot, but those are the posers and the people that aren't authentic that are questioning his heart and his evidence. And his evidence speaks for itself.
Peter has gone on to become a good friend, and I've known him for a few years now. I've always felt Pete to be a trustworthy and honest person. Basically what you see is what you get with Pete.
As regards my connection to Peter, I've forgotten how we've known each other now, 10 plus years, I think at least, something like this. And what was fascinating to me initially was to find out and see the evidence that Peter was showing via his video footage of craft, of all different kinds of craft. And he is like so many experiences in the sense that they seem to have a knowing when to go outside and take the craft. And I believe there's a communication going on there, that this is part of the communication. So many of those experiences that have done that have gone out because it's almost like they are being told it's time to come out because we're here. And I think he's been instrumental, as many like him, in showing the tangible reality of this. There's a very physical part to this interaction and what have you.
My experiences started at a young age, and typically what people refer to as like the grey alien is what I was having experiences with, or a few of them over time, but they were white. And I had my first UFO sighting when I was 12 years old, and that was of a, instead of a disc, like the typical disc, this sort of looked like the weight on the end of a weight bar. So if you pulled the weight off, put it sideways, that's what it looked like. And it was massive. It was sort of like a matte grey colour as well. And it sort of just went in front of this hill in my hometown until out of view, and that was it. I didn't know who to talk to about it. It wasn't something that I really focused on at that time, to tell you the truth. So over time, like, I just continued to live my life. I would have what we could deem as high strangeness experiences. It's sort of always been a part of my life, high strangeness. Looking back now, I knew that I was having telepathy from the age of 7. As far out there as that sounds, but that's just, you know, you connect the dots as you go along in life. And in later years, the sightings continued. I've filmed a lot of crafts over the years, and the way I can describe it, there is times where I'll be out and about and I'll be with people and, you know, we just happen to have a sighting. But even at my home, a lot of things happen when people are around. And the way I can explain it is it's like this sort of thought or a knowingness to just walk outside and look up. And this has just been repeated over many years now. Like, this is about 10 years of evidence that I've got now, though I'm a lifelong experiencer, but constantly, every month, every day, there's something happening. But it was over a period of a few years that I started to realise, and especially through contacts with these beings, when taken to other realms, on board crafts, or even in physical interactions in what we could say this reality, that more knowledge came to light about who I am, what I am. It's not just me having these experiences, but more information came to light about what we could say is sort of like self-mastery in terms of meditation, observing thoughts, and through that I started to work out even more when they were about that sort of feeling, that knowingness. There's been many types of crafts that I've filmed. Your typical orb-shaped crafts, balls of light, flying saucers, cigar-shaped crafts, triangle-shaped crafts, morphing crafts that sort of change shape and morph. It's pretty much unbounded in the way that these crafts can appear, and also the beings, depending on what type of beings or intelligences you're interacting with. When it got pretty serious was when I started seeing what I could term as like blue orbs coming into the house. They would sort of just come in, and sometimes there would be like what I can describe as like lightning in the house, and these blue orbs would be there, and they would just be going, you know, floating around doing whatever they do. And eventually I started to see what I could call liquid blue light beings. They were about 7 foot tall, nor male nor female, though they sort of looked more masculine. And I later found out this was a projection from the blue orbs, that they could manifest into that. That's when things sort of really started to get serious. You know, over the years, there's many different things that come with this type of phenomena. Marks on my body that under black light glow into the dark. I've had that happen multiple times. And even a circle appearing on the front lawn. And that was sort of coincided with an experience as well. Now, a lot of my experiences, they're in this physical reality. I get taken on board crafts as well, or to other planets I've been to, as well as what I could say is completely different realms where there are no planets, there are no stars. They're pure conscious realms, even up to what I call the angelic realms or kingdom, the geometric light realms, into source as well. But there has been times where I've had the missing time, or there's been no recall, and in the earlier days that was really frustrating for me. That's how I came across Mary Rodwell. Mary Rodwell was a guiding light to me, and I guess helped me to help myself to understand my experiences more without leading me on. It was all the information I already had, but I guess through some of the shock or things being too much for the body to handle, the mind to handle, and still function in this reality, it called for basically a hypnotherapy session with Mary. And yeah, I've only had a few done, but they're very hard to watch as well, because what I didn't expect to happen, but sort of something in me knew that this was a possibility, was another intelligence started to speak through me and give me information. It's crazy, but it is what it is.
I've been working as a counsellor for nearly 35 years. I've worked in both the medical practice, grief and bereavement, hospice, and many other issues, what I call normal counselling issues. But for the last 25 years, I've been working in the arena of the phenomena that we call contact with non-human intelligences. And for that, I have now worked with individuals and families globally. And for that has been at least 3,500 individuals and families. That has been also with all kinds of cultures, including professionals, lawyers, doctors, nurses, etc., as well as, what I call the everyday people, from, farmers to housewives. And of course, a lot of my work now is with children as well. I've been very fortunate because of the work that I've done, is that I've been able to work with academics and scientists, astrophysicists, as well as professors in psychology and psychiatry, as well as medical doctors, etc., social workers, those within the field of mental health, etc. What has been very vital and extremely important in my work is, in recent years, I became one of the co-founders of the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Free Foundation. And this was vital because it brought in all of these specialists in various fields of knowledge to look at this phenomena from a perspective that was far more broader in its scope than pure ufology, which is looking at the evidence of individuals having interactions with craft, the reality, the nuts and bolts. We were looking at it from a perspective of human consciousness. And that brought in all those in that field of consciousness, and the Free Foundation now has become the Consciousness and Contact Research Institute. And it's exploring this now from every level, which includes those that have experiences as near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, shamanic experiences, hallucinogenic experiences, experiences of activation through healing, Kundalini awakening. All of those experiences ultimately bring in this understanding that as we raise our consciousness, we then connect with a range of non-human intelligences, including not just extraterrestrial, but extra-dimensional, trans-dimensional, and those that we would talk of as literally beings that may very well time travel and come from our future. So this is far more complex in terms of understanding human consciousness than we ever realized up to this point. I'm asked all the time, what is this all about? Why are we being interacted with by this range of physical and non-physical intelligences? And it becomes very interesting because the more that those who are having these encounters allow themselves to understand their communication, to have this communication, are finding out more and more about who and what we are. And for me, it was looking at, again, why were certain people having these encounters? The most important pattern of encounters is that it appears to be intergenerational. So in other words, if I'm helping a gentleman with these experiences, for example, I will often discover that not only his siblings, but his parents may be having, or one or both of his parents, one or both of his grandparents, and also his own children will be having these experiences as well. But what I was noticing was, if you like, a kind of upgrade in awareness with each generation. And that fascinated me. So what was actually going on? What was happening in this upgrade? This upgrade seemed to be that more and more the more recent generations appeared to be a lot more multidimensionally aware. And what I mean by that is their abilities beyond the five senses. But not only were the five senses more expanded, in other words, the touch, they saw a greater spectrum of light, hearing was more sensitive, all their physical senses were enhanced, but they were able to see more of the visual spectrum. They were able to see the different frequencies that are not visible in our 3D environment. In other words, orbs of light, beings, energy fields, a whole range of sensing, knowing, understanding, including awareness of not just having this present life, but awareness of other lives in other dimensions, other realities, as well as on other planets. So each generation seemed to be more cognizant of these kinds of multidimensional realities. And this is, again, when people say to me, so what is the agenda? The agenda is coming from, I believe, these intelligences are coming to visit us primarily because they're part of us. And this goes back to the DNA. And I look at that very deeply in my second book, The New Human, where I explore the whistleblower material from geneticists that are saying that we have been intelligently designed, that there is evidence of the splicing of the DNA. And this has created an indigenous being that has added non-human extraterrestrial DNA to it from various star systems. And what has happened over the centuries is the gods, as we call them, which I and many others now have come to the conclusion weren't gods at all, but most likely these intelligences that have been monitoring their seeded family, which is the human Homo sapiens sapiens, have seeded us and watched our evolution and assisted in that in terms of interaction with us all the way through history. And we've got, I believe, many of our scientists and our poets, those that we venerate, I suspect many of them have had interactions with these beings, such as Leonardo da Vinci, I suspect is one of them, and many others, Einstein and others, and Tesla, of course, that in their dream state, they got these information downloads. This is happening across the globe with people from all walks of life are getting downloads of information from physics, origin of the species, information about new healing techniques. All of these are being downloaded into the consciousness of those individuals that are having these experiences, as well as communicating to them that they are part of them. In other words, those with experiences start to feel connected to these star beings. They feel and know that they are connected to them on a very deep, profound level. And so when people say, well, what is the agenda? I say to them, look, there are many agendas, I believe, from my research. That is what's indicating many different agendas. But the most important statistic that we discovered with the free surveys that we did, which is 4,200 people, 600 questions, the overriding important fact was that 85% of them, after they had become attuned and accepting of their experiences, had psycho-spiritual transformation on all multiple levels of their awareness. And that is, to me, telling you what the agenda is, because this is about an evolutionary shift in consciousness and awareness that is allowing us to access more of our genetic star heritage.
When you're an experiencer, the only way I can describe it is it's like if you met my friends and family before all this sort of revved up in later years compared to before it, they would say that this is not Pete, this is a completely different person, and I have to agree. Your habits, your lifestyle, how you treat yourself, how you treat others, how you have, your outlook on life completely changes as well. Your food habits, your social habits, everything changes. And it's really only those that really know you and that are close to you and that are around you that see this change. And that's sort of what makes people think about this reality being a real reality, when they see that change in someone. That's an example, like anybody that knew me before these experiences got very intense, started to be like, this is a complete different person. So there was sort of this shift when you start waking up, finding out who you are, what you are, and what we all are a part of. There seems to come this sort of urgency and this push and this drive from yourself, not from the beings or anyone else, that you've got to do something to play your part within humanity, to help humanity. And what I can do, nobody else can do, but what every single other person can do, I can't do it or anyone else can do it. It's like everyone's got their own unique thing, and all of us doing that and playing a part as a collective, that's where this sort of exponential jump in human consciousness and evolution and getting over the obstacles that humanity is facing. This is where we're going to push through that, and we're already been in the midst of that for quite some time.
Why many of those within the field of ufology have only been exploring it from a nuts and bolts perspective is because we are programmed very much into believing that unless you can touch, feel, see, hear it, etc., it's It's not real. You have to, the only things that are real are with our physical senses. And that's been very, very important, because there is evidence from whistleblowers of many craft that have been examined that have crashed. There's been technology from those craft. There are, I would say, millions to billions of people now, everyday people, that have photographed and filmed through their iPhone the craft, all different craft. And even if you want to dismiss some of them as a possibility of not being accurate, when you get everyday people, and I get them phoning me, telling me about something they've seen that has changed their reality, that they never even looked at UFOs, they'd never even been in the slightest interested in them, and then suddenly having this huge craft over their house, and how they changed afterwards and what have you. When people say to me, what's the reality? I said, the reality is that after these experiences, people change in dramatic ways from their experience. You don't have a change like that from a fantasy or imagination, where they start to come out with unusual languages we call light languages or star languages, start to write strange scripts, for example, doing unusual artwork, not only of the beings and the craft they've seen, but other complex artwork. Some of them start downloading music. They say it just comes to them. All these expressions occur after they've had interactions with these beings. And the reason that it's hard to quantify is a lot of these experiences are in a dream state, because what happens is that when they are taken, they're often put into a trance state, so they don't overreact, they don't traumatize themselves anymore. So it feels like a dream. But often when they say to me, but I thought it was a dream, and I'd say, for how long have you remembered it then? They'll say, well, I've never forgotten it, and it's been 10 years ago. I said, dreams aren't like that. Normal dreams you forget within a few minutes of you waking up. Dreams that are not dreams are the ones you still remember. And our surveys were convincing in understanding this, because we discovered that out of those that had experiences, 75% of encounters are out of body. So it becomes even harder for the person to qualify that and make it real, because it's out of body. And only 25% is physical, but the physical side, they will be left with marks on their body. They may find themselves outside with all the doors locked. They may find that they've lost their pajamas, or their pajamas are in another room tucked under the bed somewhere, or whatever. Strange things like this will go on. And others will have apports, and apports are objects that suddenly appear with them. They may be coins or crystals or something like this, as evidence something has happened. And sometimes things just go missing for months, and suddenly where you put them, they're there again. So they also have that kind of thing happen. They also can affect technology, and many of them can't wear watches because of their energy now has changed. They can't wear watches anymore. These are all the phenomena.
Watch this, your street light's going to turn off when I walk under it.
Phobias are another evidence of a reality, where people get a phobia of spiders or clowns or owls or skeletons. And often these are screens. And the reason they're scared is they're screens for these ETs. And so they say, but I can't stand clowns. They terrify me. There's nothing to explain that unless you understand that they often, the form they will give the person is the form of a clown rather than the grey ET. Or the phobias that go with this are also very clear patterns that this is a real experience. But more than anything is the transformation of the individual, where they lose interest in everyday, the materialistic values. They lose interest in, the money side of things. They become more holistic. They start being more interested in changing their diet to a more healthy diet. They want to live in more rural areas where they can grow their own food. Their whole attitude to life and spirituality, and I'm talking about a universal spirituality, will completely change from these encounters. So when somebody says to me, oh, you know, is that a coincidence? How can it be a coincidence when this is happening to thousands upon thousands of people that have contact with these non-human intelligences that are part of who and what we are?
Got it. God, you are hard to get, you. Amazing. Look at that.
In terms of hypnosis, I use that very regularly with individuals that come to me with what we call missing time, where they've gone on a journey. It should have only taken them maybe an hour. They see some strange lights, the car stops, or they may not even be aware of that. Then all of a sudden they come to and they have lost 2 or 3 hours and they want to know what happened. In hypnosis, you can take them back to that experience and they can explore it. But for those questioning what really the value of hypnosis, how can we trust it, etc., etc., I'm going to quote Dr. John Mack, who was former head of psychiatry at Harvard University, that wrote 2 books, Abduction, Human Encounters with Aliens, and Passport to the Cosmos. Now, what Dr. Mack did, and he came in as a skeptic, but a professor of psychiatry, and he did a psychological testing on all of those that he eventually did hypnosis with. He was convinced that through the process of hypnosis and the information that he got, it had more value than conscious memory. And the reason he says that is this, that when we look at something consciously, we are editing out things that don't fit with our paradigm, that don't fit with our reality. We are constantly editing what we accept in a conscious way. But the subconscious does not edit anything out because it doesn't bring in the analytical, logical part of the mind. So it is giving you the pure experience without the editing. So in fact, he said, information coming from hypnosis is actually more accurate than conscious memory. Now, this is from the head of psychiatry at Harvard University we're talking about here, who studied this and went into depth and put his profession on the line to say this. And I agree completely, because what I've discovered is when you take somebody into an altered state and they let go of that monitoring side of their logical, analytical mind, then they are taken into the reality they have experienced with detail, understanding, and with information. They've said to me, I have no idea how I know this. I have no idea this happened this way. And I've actually played devil's advocate a little bit and said, well, if I said to you, could you have imagined that or created that? And they will usually say to me, not in a million years would I have ever imagined what I have just come out with. So there you have it. It is usually beyond their imagination, the information that they come out with. And the interesting thing is that I'll say to them, does this resonate? Even though it's weird and bizarre and crazy, does it resonate with you? And every time they will say, well, actually it does. even though it's bizarre and weird and strange and hugely, unbelievable on their conscious mind. So when it comes to hypnosis, what we're really doing is just shutting down left brain from editing the information that the subconscious, superconscious, or higher self is another name for it, is giving us of that particular exploration. And for me, what has been profound is by doing that, it completely changes the way someone understands themselves and is often hugely healing and hugely beneficial.
Whoa, that's crazy.
What was interesting for me in hearing much of Pete's story, which again, like so many now across the planet, the downloads of information, his connection to his team, as I call it the non-human team, which I believe we all have. What was fascinating to me was when we actually worked together, and for the very first time, when Peter said to me, I want to know about this particular experience that I've had, I'm sure something happened. Really, what was interesting in that very first session, remember, this is the very first time that he'd ever had hypnosis. And the interesting thing with it was not only did Peter go into his subconscious, superconscious to remember what happened in that particular outing, that particular trip, in terms of his interaction with the beings, but what happened to him and gave it absolute validity because it was so spontaneous was one of his team walking in, and I call this overshadowing him and giving information about him in the third person. And that was something that I know shocked Peter quite a lot afterwards to realize what had happened. But for me, it shows very much that this is, when these things happen, the reality of this is not a fantasy. This is not you creating something. When you experience something like that, and I have experienced similar, it takes you by surprise. It is completely unexpected, and it is absolutely valid because the information coming from this guide was actually completely on the ball with information that was valid and important for Peter. So for me, the whole experience just demonstrated integrity and validity to his whole experience, and one that I think demonstrates again his other experiences that he talks about, and the information that he's come out with, again, is far more expansive and deep and complex to the human Peter that I would chat to over a cup of coffee.
We are Ryan. Fifth. Time, space, not what you think. Awareness turning on. Connection to source. Being realised.
My name's Jason Gleaves and I'm a UK-based ufologist and international author. I'm also ex-Royal Air Force and British Aerospace Airbus Division. My expertise is in video image analysis, in which I've analysed video footage and basically thousands of images of UFOs and extraterrestrial beings from people worldwide. Out of the huge amount of images and footage I receive of aerial phenomena, basically unexplained anomalies, I try to extract the wheat from the chaff of the unexplained objects seen, trying to eliminate day-to-day objects such as aircraft, military and civilian, drones, which are more common today and readily available, very cheap to buy, birds and insects, which are probably the most common misidentification of UFOs, and of course we've got lenticular cloud formations and unusual weather phenomena, just to name a few. I've analysed videos and images of UFOs for many years now, and probably started around 2014, where I set up my media platforms called UFOnly. It's where most people contact me for answers to their unexplained images. I first came across Peter through my own ufology journey. Peter had been having regression sessions with the highly respected hypnotherapist Mary Rodwell, where he was trying to recover lost and missing time memories of his sightings and many experiences, quite often with remarkable results. It was after seeing this I was basically hooked. When Peter contacts me or sends me new footage of images of anomalous objects, I just know things are going to be interesting, and they are generally very good. My findings and analysis of Peter's evidence, in my opinion, rule out fakes and foul play due to the conclusive evidence which is presented by him. More often than not, the presence of buildings, trees and foliage and surrounding terrain give great perspective to the aerial objects captured in the images, giving the evidence more credence and public acceptability. A few good examples of Peter's experiences are probably the two separate sightings of a small humanoid-looking being, a grey being with the telltale signs of large almond-shaped eyes and a large head. One had been a video footage which I analysed of a grey being which appeared to be peering from the side of the camera shot, back and forth. Again, upon analysing the footage and applying enhanced filters to the footage itself, we can clearly see the being blinking its eyes, which can be more difficult to fake or replicate. The other image had been taken by Peter outside of his home when he'd heard noises from his roof. He basically went outside and took a photograph of his pickup truck and the surrounding area, and the truck was parked outside of his house. Again, upon analysing the image of this small grey type of being is clearly seen, and it's peering from behind the bonnet of the truck. I analysed both cases separately and overlaid them together to identify a match, and I confirmed they appeared to be of the same type of being, grey if not the same, with large heads, large dark eyes, almond-shaped, small nose and mouth. Peter's experiences and evidence is an important piece to the ufology jigsaw, and it's proof to the human race who are waking up en masse to what is really happening with regards to contact and extraterrestrial interactions. We only have to look at some of the really good evidence out there, especially within the ufology community as a whole. We're not alone, and we've never been alone.
Another one cut behind, there's 3 of them. One shot.
My name is John Vivanco, and I've been a professional remote viewer for around 25 years now. I was trained in the formal military style of remote viewing called CRV, or controlled remote viewing, and then got pulled into a think tank as a professional remote viewer shortly after that. From there, I eventually ran the remote viewing teams on projects for clients as the director of operations and co-ran the think tank with another person. Now, I've worked with corporations on the side of regular business issues as well as future technologies and basic technological issues, to investments and markets, as well as entertainment and scientific research like NASA scientists, all the way to geneticists. On the other side, I've also worked with alphabet agencies. For instance, I did counterterror for the FBI after 9/11. We were basically mapping out future potential terrorist attacks on US soil, as well as profiling on potential terrorists in the United States. Basically coming down to how to stop any potential attacks. There's really nothing that remote viewing cannot figure out, or at least point you in the right direction on. Now, I know that remote viewing, when it was declassified, the CIA basically put out a report that went the path of claiming it had no useful applications. It's like flipping a coin. But those in the intelligence world, well, they know much better. And the CIA report on it was really just to get the public's mind off of it. You can't tell the public, hey, check out this method to know all of our secrets. It works really well. You can't do it. So, declassifications like this are controlled when it comes to the public, and remote viewing is actually something that anyone can learn. Remote viewing is basically a protocol and a methodology that was developed by Stanford Research Institute in the San Francisco Bay Area of the US in the 1970s. It was funded by the CIA and the US government, and was basically in response to what was heard through the intelligence grapevine on what the Soviets were doing at that time. The Soviets were looking for ways to use psychics as spies. And so the US intelligence community had to do the same thing, because you can't neglect things like that if your so-called enemy is doing it, right? The US government used, and still does use, remote viewing to provide an asset to intelligence agency operations as well as military operations. Whether that's the CIA, FBI, or DIA. They all use it to a certain degree to help them in intelligence gathering. Now, the protocol of remote viewing is basically a system in order to keep a remote viewer blind. And the way in which it works is that the remote viewer is given typically an 8-digit number that's associated with something they're to remote view. A person who is called the tasker basically writes up the question. So something like, for instance, describe President Lincoln giving the Gettysburg Address during the US Civil War, right? They'll write that down. And then the tasker will just assign a random 8-digit number to that, and then they only give the number to the remote viewer. Okay, this keeps the remote viewer blind to what they're viewing, and so they will only feel and describe what's there. They won't be making stuff up. Now, when they receive the number, they'll work through a remote viewing methodology, and that's typically done on paper. They're moving through this methodology in a series of stages that it kind of expand exponentially, getting more and more detailed information on the target. And we always run these projects in teams. In other words, multiple remote viewers doing the same question. So this creates a situation where you can cross-correlate the data between the viewers, and really makes for an accurate intelligence gathering tool. Now, I do a lot of work on the side of the strange and paranormal with remote viewing, from how to uncover evidence of anomalous happenings and doing expeditions to these things, to remote viewing people like Pete Slattery. I met Pete at a conference that we were both speaking at in, I think it was 2017. And I think that was the first time that I heard his experiences in detail, as well as seeing his videos and photographs of anomalous objects. Now, we've done projects where we have found that some claims people make and photos or videos they take are just lies and fakery, even though they seem legitimate on the surface. So at that point, I figured, well, my team and I really should remote view some of these things that Pete's captured. While some of the photos and videos appear genuine, you never know if something is fake these days. I think the first thing that my team and I dug into was a really, really curious and unique video Pete took. It was this infrared video footage of a being with a large head and eyes inside of his house. And it was kind of poking its head out from the corner of the video screen. You know, it did that a couple of times and it was looking into the camera, it appeared. So we had to look at that one to figure out what was going on. We saw that this was indeed an alien in his house, and there wasn't just one though, there was basically a whole crew of them. These beings were not totally physical, but they could straddle the physical and the non-physical. In other words, they're multidimensional. They had landed a craft that was, in a sense, inside of his house as well as in the yard. Because an aspect of them and their craft is non-physical, this can actually happen, you know, where the craft can sit on the house in another dimension. And these particular beings were described as being in support of Pete, and not the scary abducting type. And what was actually quite funny was the viewers were really focused on these beings going through the refrigerator and really interested in their dairy products there. But these guys, you know, they were there to physically check on them as well as provide some sort of evidence that they are with them. And this is why Pete was able to get them on camera. Now in remote viewing, what can happen is that when you view beings who have a broader consciousness than humans, well, they can take notice of you. They can take notice of the remote viewers. And these beings did that. They took notice of us, the remote viewing team, and myself, and they interacted. In fact, they still interact with us to this day. Pete gets so many interesting videos and photographs, and you know, we've looked at quite a few of them repeatedly, right? Over and over. So I'll often task not only my professional team, but I'll give viewers in training some of Pete's footage to remote view. In fact, some of his stuff has been viewed by up to 40 different remote viewers. You know, one of them is a shape flashing in the sky with multiple colors and moving into these like geometric patterns, changing shape. And this is actually a fun one for remote viewers in training to have a look at because it's so dynamic. Now they get that this is a Merkaba. It's a Merkaba type craft in which there are multiple like high vibrational beings inside of it. Now Merkaba is basically these two spinning pyramid type shapes that you'll often see being used by high vibrational beings. It's like this way they travel. And when you get these Merkaba type craft, they're also like a cross between a dimensional portal and a ship. So it's kind of like this back and forth thing. So there are multiple beings that are going in and out of this construct and looking and communicating with Pete. The big question for me becomes, you know, with all of the happenings around Pete on a consistent basis, is why? You know, why is this happening? You know, this is not a normal thing. When we looked at that question, it kind of got, I think, a little bit complicated, at least from the standpoint of how humans typically think, but not from a multidimensional standpoint. The one we know as Pete is not so much one individual. Of course, there is the physical one that calls himself that name, but you know, really that's just the physical. The data reflects somewhat of a rotation of beings that can and do go in and out of Pete's body. Frankly, he's described as being an experiment. You know, we're not talking a human experiment, we're talking a multi-dimensional alien type experiment. Now, Pete's genetics, you know, they've been manipulated and they're different than a normal human. This has been happening to him since he was a child. And this allows a higher vibrational and multidimensional communication and hearing on his part to come through. It also allows other beings to merge, to come and go with that body and mind complex of Pete. You know, his body and mind are an experiment, and it's not been done before. So he's watched closely. He's considered the grand experiment. Now, because his body is a mix of human and alien genetics as a sort of experiment pushing the evolutionary boundaries of a person and likely meant to roll out to a species, you have a lot of beings who are really interested in watching this. There are some as well who use aspects of Pete's body to tinker with and to take things from. Some of this is painful for him, as we've seen, because it involves sometimes the physical abduction scenario, right? As in the case that we looked at recently, the very clear silver disc that he caught on camera. You know, this event was something that he had missing time with, and when viewed, These beings did not want to be known at all, and they were pulling some genetic material from his body. Overall, the massive library that he's accumulated over these years with these anomalous lights, craft, and even beings that show up is something that really should turn heads. I mean, in remote viewing, many of these videos and photos, there's a lot going on in here, and there's this complicated unraveling to it. But the remote viewing data really verifies the base level claims that he makes. Strange things happen to me because of who I am and what I do, but when Pete and I hang out, it ups it a couple of levels, a couple of notches.
Over time, this all led to what some would call CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, or initiating contact, I prefer to call it, from the point of view where through meditation, remote viewing, really intention, you can initiate contact, because the way I like to explain it is, imagine that you're a computer. And what everything in the universe is made up of, including the other dimensions and realms and what have you, imagine that as the wireless internet, that everything's a part of it, even you. And that when you put out a thought, that goes into what we could say is the universe, equaling the wireless internet, and other computers or intelligences can pick up on that and start to, I guess, show themselves. And I do this in groups and help people out individually through mastering these types of techniques. But it's all got to do with intent and your frequency, meaning being in a place of love, neutrality as well, to where you can deal with what happens if it happens, in terms of a lot of people want to see this stuff, but a lot of people aren't ready for it. And it's not saying that all humanity isn't, but there is quite a shock factor to it. There's so many people that have been with me. Sometimes I have up to a couple of hundred people at the Skywatches or the initiating contact events and self-mastery workshops, and they're very taken aback by it. But it's a good thing at the same time, because they're in a group setting. So because people are there with them, experiencing these other forms of intelligences or crafts or orbs down low or crafts, it's like a way that wean them into it to sort of go on their own journey after that. This is where it gets really strange. Like I say to people, the beings appear like ghosts, like they're multidimensional. And what I mean by that is, imagine when I say like they can land their craft on your house or on you in bed, people are like, how can they do that? They're thinking of it as nuts and bolts. Basically, if you can imagine, we'll just say a flying saucer, for example, in apparition form, meaning it's ghost-like. It's like structured from like mist, or looks like a cloud. It can go through this physical matter that we're experiencing, the chair, the house, the walls, what have you, and it can come through and land on you. Now, sometimes there's a hum or a vibration or a feeling that you can feel going through you. Now, they can take you physically on board that way, or they can even pull the consciousness out of the body and put you on the craft that way. And that's how some of the experiences happened. Even when you close your eyes, think about how you perceive and experience your dreams. Well, your eyes are shut, you're not seeing anything. It's because it's in here. And through the pineal gland and through thought transfer, which is basically where they project whatever they're trying to communicate, it goes from their light body Merkaba to your light body, comes down through the crown, through the right side of the brain to the left, and we decode it as thoughts, ideas, epiphanies, concept, knowing things to be true, but we're not sure how. It's just these thoughts, these ideas. And so when that's happening, when I'm interfacing with these intelligences, there's stories playing out, like visions of the stories or whatever they're trying to show me, or flashes of imagery. And there's also feeling and emotions that come with that. And over time, once you develop these types of things, like I have over years now, you can start to hear things that most people don't hear. Like, I'm already seeing things that most people don't see anyway, physically with my eyes. You know, even as a form of communication, tastes and smells can come through as well. So like, we're operating in the five sense reality: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. But we've also got an extra two, which is the pineal gland and telepathy thought. Yeah, so when it comes to the Merkaba, like people are probably wondering what that is, but the Merkaba is your light vehicle, your light body, it's our consciousness. So we've already got it. But we're not really seeing it in this physical reality. So a lot of these intelligences, they're not even in physical nuts and bolts type crafts, if you want to put it that way. The crafts themselves, a lot of the time that we could say are physical type, they're either grown or they've got material within them that I've even got a sample of, where the craft has basically got a consciousness and is living in and of itself, and is symbiotic with the pilot or the crew on the craft as well. A lot of the crafts, when I'm in them, not all of them, some of them, it almost looks like you're in a white room, like in a movie, like everything's just white. Some of the Orion crafts that I go on, they're sort of, how can I describe this? It's like a whitish blue light. There's walls, there's no corners, but it's sort of curvature around where the corners would be. It's quite amazing to experience, especially when you're interfacing with these intelligences and what have you.
I'm James Gilliland, and I'm the founder of ECETI, which stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And we've been doing this for pretty much 40 years. The ranch has been around for, I think, 37, 38 years. ECETI, the actual location. I've been in contactee all my life. I've had 2 major near-death experiences, several white light experiences. I've studied for 36 years intensely with lamas and yogis and master teachers around the world. As far as Peter Slattery's evidence, I know Peter very well. We've spent a lot of time together. He's like my brother from another mother. But everywhere Peter goes, there's activity, not just UFO activity, and he gets the best photographs of anybody I know, but spiritual activity as well. And he's getting incredible photographs of the beings themselves. So it's unsurpassed. I think he's probably number one as far as getting credible evidence of UFOs and the beings themselves. The reason that we're having contact and we're having incredible videos taken and photographs and the pictures of the beings themselves is because we've all risen to the occasion, and they're looking for intelligent life, basically, and those are people that have risen to the occasion that are spiritual. They don't care about your left brain. They want people with the emotional capabilities and the telepathic capabilities that they can communicate with. So that's why we're so successful, because we've taken a spiritual approach to contact. And you know, all of us, there's several of us that we know when the ships are there. We know who's on the ships. We know all about their cultures, their technology, everything.
I'm straight in on this guy as far as I can go.
That jet's moving in.
Whoa, look at that.
Huge.
Look at that thing. Oh, it doubled. There it goes. It's doubling.
Huge.
It's split into 2. It's split into 2.
Woo. Thank you very much.
Now it has another one. Whoa. It's doubled. Oh, now it's going back. It's morphing back into...
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's 3. It's 3.
It is.
No, it's 2 now.
I see. I can see.
It's totally doing this. Whoa, whoa. Check it out, man. Now it's a double again. It's doubling, it's moving. Whoa, look at that.
You know, the reason these beings are visiting the Earth right now is several reasons. One, there are beings that have been here all along, and they have their technologies. Some of them went under during the days of Atlantis and Lemuria through the pole shifts and cataclysms, and they have their ships. There are beings that have been around for quite some time that some would call the reptilians or some of the greys, and I would strongly urge people to avoid that group. You don't want to hang out with that group, and they are very good at taking over people in power or people that are leaders in all fields. They're very good at stepping in and, you know, preying upon your ego or your lack of integrity, you might say. There's some other benevolent beings that are us. They're our ancient ancestors. They were the Pleiadians that started the original colonies of Atlantis and Lemuria. The ancient Lyrians started the first colonies, and they're the ancestors of the Pleiadians. There's the Orion Council of Light, Arcturians, the Syrians. They're all well documented. The lion beings are well documented. The feline beings throughout history. But they've been coming and going, and we've reached a point in time where we're ready for contact. We're ready to reunite with the greater family of man and to turn this planet around.
It's lighting up for me, giving me a real nice stable. Whoa, whoa, thank you, thank you.
There's a lot of different types of beings out there. There are the typical greys, like there's beings from the Pleiades, Orion, Sirius, the Andromeda constellation, as well as the Andromeda galaxy, Arcturus, many different places. Now, with that said, not all these beings that I'm interacting with are even from another star system. There is that happening. This is where it gets even trippier, to where some of these beings are from inside the Earth, some of these beings are living right beside us, and some of these beings are even coming back from the future. So how do you tell people this? Like, this is what I know. This isn't a belief system. This isn't what I think. This is what I know. And that's sort of where it gets complicated, because people have got a preconceived notion that it's just some little green dude coming from Zeta Reticuli in a flying saucer. But the fact is, this is more multidimensional than one can perceive if they're not open to it, or if they're very linear in their thinking. And this is where if people are just open-minded in general and they're open to these things, or they've experienced some things, like they've got that, they get the wheels turning so they can start to understand those concepts and ideas. So there's also angelic type energies and celestial energies, and then pure thought form energies that come from these pure thought form conscious realms as well.
As far as Pete as a person, I think he's extremely well dedicated to the work. And again, he's got the connection. He has the spiritual connection. He gets the best footage I've seen. He sees things that I don't even see half the time. I don't have best vision either. So, but, as far as a person, again, I would trust Pete with my life, basically. As far as the best evidence that both Peter and I have, we have treetop level ships coming in with 200 people on the ground, and they power up and pulse everybody in the field. You feel the connection, you feel the energy. We've done it redundantly. We've done it with Ancient Aliens. We've done it with all these major crews that have come up, Fox News, ABC. All these guys have come up, Paranormal State. We told them exactly when and where the ships would appear, and they did. They came right on cue with the cameras rolling. We have pictures of every kind of ship you can imagine, everything from cylinders to giant triangles to discs, light ships that come in every color. We have all of that, which, begs the question is, why is this not available to the public? It seems like whenever Peter and I get together, things happen. It's kind of crazy. There's other people too that are on that same frequency, that whenever we're together, we see all kinds of activity. Peter calls them the wispies. They're little spirits that go cruising by. We have them here, and they're in Peter's house all the time. The UFOs flying over on a regular basis. I'd tell Peter, we'd do a little thing where we'd tap into them, and I'd say at 5 something, the ships are going to come over, and Peter run out there and bam, right on track, the ships would come in. And he can do that too as well. But it's when you get people together that have risen to the occasion of like mind, the more people you have gathered that are holding a frequency or a certain consciousness, the more activity you have. So, when Peter and myself and several others of us, when we all get together, we have amazing activity, and they come down low. They're putting on amazing displays. They're reacting to the people on the ground. There's no way you can try to fluff this off as a space station or a shuttle or a satellite or anything of that nature. This is far beyond. We've had no negativity whatsoever from it. We had nothing but positive. And they're waiting for us to rise to the occasion. They're waiting for us to come together in cohesive groups that are holding a frequency of love and joy and bliss, and that people that have open minds, loving hearts, and pure intents, that's what they're looking for.
ETs aren't even 5% of what's out there. It's said today that there are 2 trillion galaxies in the visible universe. Now, you grab all that, even with the other dimensions where beings can exist still in those areas, meaning you can have life in this dimension, and then you can have life in the next dimension still on that body, but a different aspect of that body. We could say a different facet of that body, or of a planetary body. So you get all that over the 2 trillion galaxies, and that's still not even 5% of what's out there from what my knowledge is and what I've experienced, and I definitely don't know it all. With the more experiences and the more learning and the reconnecting back to what I could say I know on a higher level, I'm still realising how little I do know.
What's important here, the implications of, you know, Peter's experiences are one thing. What I have found with the work that I've done globally now, I mean, I get accessed from all over the globe, from Uruguay as far as Poland and Russia, etc., is there are millions of people out there having experiences. And sometimes they don't even know what it is they're experiencing. They just know they're different. They feel different. They may be seeing energy fields. They may be seeing beings and think it's just them and they're going crazy or whatever. What has been wonderful about the fact that Peter has been so honest and open about his experiences is that he's giving the permission to many of those out there that are having similar experiences, a validation that this is okay, that you know, that this is an important part of what we call now the shift in human consciousness on this planet. I am meeting a whole range of individuals that come from professional fields, academic fields. I've got a group of medical doctors that are all having experiences, professors that are having experiences, physicists, diplomats, lawyers, social workers, and young children that are all talking about their interactions with either light beings, as Peter talks about. Many of them are having interactions with light beings. I was talking to a 10-year-old who lives in Australia only recently, and he said he's visited by light beings. He comes from a planet of light. He said that on that planet he can manifest instantly, but here it's much harder to manifest. He even talked about the reset on this planet right now. The information that Peter and others, so many others, are bringing through has this theme, the theme that we are now in a place of human evolution that is a reset to an evolutionary shift in consciousness. And this is what Peter talks about with his connection to his team. And this is what so many others, and I can say the credibility of the sources alongside Peter with similar information from very highly professional people that know what this looks like, and how it's judged by mainstream psychology, are actually coming out and talking about this. I talk about Dr. Lena Olson, who is a molecular biologist who sees mantis beings and a whole range of otherworldly beings. She talks about the fact that, you know, she was asked by the mantid being, had an instant healing to tell her, yes, it's time to come out the space closet now. She's just one of many, many highly trained individuals and scientists that are owning this as a reality now. So what Peter's experiencing, and what I believe millions across the globe are experiencing, is this interaction with these intelligences is assisting us as a species to awaken to more of who and what we are and what we can actually be. One of the recent information that I got was from a young 9-year-old from the US, and he said that he was visited by beings that were like kids, like 5-year-olds, and they put him to sleep. And he said they were the science team. And they told him he was special, and they showed him on screens dinosaurs and future lives. He said he goes up through his head and he can go anywhere in the universe, but he's not supposed to talk about it. They make him forget. But he also said, which was fascinating, that he's a time traveler from the future, and that he doesn't really look like this, that in fact he's only got 4 fingers and no nails. And he said the older, taller aliens, he said, give him an in-depth education. And he talked about ultraviolet light as the creation spectrum, as he's shown the past and the future And also that the IQ of aliens is over 400. Now, this is from a 9-year-old explaining out-of-body experiences, his future self, explaining the creation and how creation happens, being shown the true origin of the species. And this all started he remembers since before he was 6 years old.
We're all one consciousness interacting with itself. We don't die. We go from life to life to life to life. And from the way it's been explained to me is that it's all about experiencing and gaining knowledge for the overall collective. And sometimes there are things we're meant to do, whether it's holding space or going somewhere to partake or to do something. And from my understanding, that's what's going on right now, is that we as a collective are going through a huge shift in consciousness, and that humans, like, there's nothing like us in the universe. We're a conglomerate of many different races, including angelic energies, and what we can do a lot of these other races can't do, but we don't know it yet because of the vibratorial state that we're in. But once we join together as a collective and embrace who we are, really the sky, beyond the sky is the limit. But we've got to go through this individually and as a collective. So we've got to work on ourselves first and have forgiveness for ourselves and for others, and see where we can be of service. You know, how can we be of service and help our fellow human? Would you give the shirt off your back to help your fellow human? How we treat ourselves, the environment. These are big things in play right now that are part of this shift in consciousness. And what's happening here is actually has been going on for so long, meaning we could say we haven't been developing, and that's because of external influences, that we've allowed this to happen at the same time, that this has sort of stunted the growth of the universe at the same time, with other beings moving up the chain in their evolution as well. But we're seeing this being sorted out right now.
As far as the ETs impacting the human race positively, there's been a push-pull thing going on. There are some that have been impacting the race in a negative manner, and they're the controllers, the manipulators. And then there's some that are all about freedom and empowering the individual and helping people to make their own connection with Source, God, Creator, whatever you want to call it, Great Spirit. You know, everybody has a name for it. Almost all paths lead to the same thing as long as you honor the universal principles. But as far as they bring that, they bring universal law, they bring peace, they bring universal peace and galactic peace, basically. They bring an end to disease, they bring an end to poverty, they bring a different way of living in harmony and unlimited life. They bring a quantum leap in consciousness and evolution. So there's nothing but good to reunite with the greater family of man, and they're also here to remove the ones that have impacted humanity in a negative manner. So there's nothing but upside on this. The evidence that we are not alone is irrefutable. NASA knows all about it. They have their own crew they send out whenever there's a landing or an encounter. So does the Air Force. They have all that evidence. We have evidence of landing. We've had agreements made between different groups throughout the years. We have the secret space fleet. We have technology beyond your imagination already that's not in the regular sector. But that's all going to be released here pretty soon. That's what we're moving toward. You know, we don't need fuel anymore. And we can go to Mars or the moon in literally minutes. You know, it's not It's not a long trip for these technologies, and we need to get these technologies out in the right hands. There's no reason why we should ever have another plane crash or even another car crash with these technologies. There's no reason why people should be dying of cancer and all these other diseases, or not being able to grow a new limb or things like that. The military that have served, have lost limbs and arms and actually grow a new one. We have all that technology. So this needs to get out into the public sector and needs to get out of the hands of the controllers, and basically they have technology beyond that, unimaginable technology.
In my opinion, the ET reality and its effects on the human race are becoming more positive, with the masses waking up, raising the collective consciousness as a whole to basically a whole new level of frequency.
As far as what this means for the human race, these beings operate under universal law. And the best way I can sum it up is it's universal peace, brother-sisterly love, individual freedom and prosperity for everyone. They see the Creator in all creation. They don't divide and separate, and they don't worship external gods. And they bring that ancient wisdom to us along with extreme technologies. They've conquered disease, all of their energy needs. They have anti-gravity, they have counter-gravity. They can jump dimensions with their technology. They can bilocate, and they can do it both technologically and spiritually. They can morph their ships into 4 ships with the same crew on it. So they have technology unsurpassed. We have videos of this technology being displayed. And, if humanity's ready to take a quantum leap in consciousness and pretty much end disease and lack and poverty and all the other things that plague us, that's what they're here for.
I think there are a lot of ramifications to some of the data that we have with regard to races, not just humans, and what's going on with Pete. There's this evolutionary construct within the data that points to something that other off-planet multidimensional races are experimenting with. It's like a moment in time within a stage of evolution of a species that the experiment is looking to solve. Right? There's a turning point for a species, and we humans are right at that turning point when it comes to evolution. Will we devolve or will we evolve? If there is a successful outcome to aspects that are going on with Pete, it will be utilized in other races and not just humans in order to push them to a higher level. So the implications are huge. ETs, they've always been here. Heck, we're ETs. The human race are from out there. As humans, we're on an ever-expanding path of migration through the universe, and just right now, most of humanity doesn't realize this because it's being kept from them. But there is this slight waking up, this sort of, beginnings of opening the eyes to this alien presence, and it's significant for this time. We have to wake up. We've seen that governments have made, deals with off-planet beings, deals that use parts of humanity for experimental purposes. And this type of thing has to be known to the population at large and cannot be held under wraps anymore. This is a breaking of a universal law. So as things unfold here, I think that humans will soon wake up fully to a new dawn, that they aren't isolated on this planet, and they never have been.
We are more than what we think, and we are multidimensional beings. And once we understand that, and accept that, where we can go from here is absolutely amazing.
The bottom line is we need to start becoming more conscious of how we interact with each other and the planet. We need to rise to the occasion. We need to live a more natural life close to the earth, in harmony with nature. We need to, stop the disease and war profiteering, putting into that. And we just need to start caring for each other and taking care of each other and taking care of our environment. And the message the ETs have is the same message every master teacher's brought. Go within, make your own personal connection with Creator, and be kind to each other and be kind to the planet. And they have the same message.
For me, we live in an extraordinary time, what I believe, of human evolution. I remember a 12-year-old who had ADHD saying that before he came here in another lifetime, they put something to affect consciousness on the moon. And he said that we've been to this point 3 times and didn't quite make it. But this time, he believes that we will actually make it to another level of consciousness. Many of the children that are coming in at this time are saying the same thing. They've come in with these amazing skills, and they talk about being ecological engineers, to deal with the pollution, to create a new holistic environment for this planet. They talk about the reset, that we're here in a reset now to change the focus of humanity from its 3D materialistic dark future to one that is going to be one that is with a spiritual message of love, compassion, and heart. And the one thing I'd like to say, and someone that for those in ufology will know, Command Sergeant Robert Dean, before he died, someone I absolutely thought was such a beautiful soul. He eventually admitted that he'd been up on craft many times, and on one of the times he had been shown humanity's future. And he said, although we're going to go through a difficult time to start with, he said, they've shown me our future, and it is magnificent.